an elimination match for them. If they don't put some points on the board in this one, that's going to be GG's for them.
Yeah, and for those of you who might not be aware, we have two leagues. This is the Invitational League, and then we have the Open League. And so we give the top four Invitational teams an opportunity to, the top four Open teams have an opportunity to play their way into the Invitational League. So the result is, the bottom four Invitational League teams drop down to the Open League for the following season. And if Fantallis can't win this, then But We're Buddies will be locked into one of those bottom four spots, unfortunately.
Yeah, and as we head into this, we get a pretty nice Tier 1 tree pull, 20 rupees, so a grand total of 80 rupees. And we didn't mention it earlier, but Week 6 is all dungeons key sanity. So small keys, maps, compasses, and big keys are all shuffled.
And fortunately, there's nothing on Lumberjack, though, since we did just say it's all dungeons, this is an Agaseed. By definition, that is one of the dungeons you have to do in all dungeons.
Yeah, it doesn't really make that big of a difference from your standard seed, since you do still hope that you can do it right at the end after clearing Ganon's tower. The only exception to that would be if you were in a mirrorless seed, which an all dungeon seed by definition cannot be anyway. So they're still hoping that they don't have to do it until right at the end. We get the hammer. That's a nice start.
Yeah, always good to have a reasonably powerful weapon early.
Yeah, and given that this is key sanity, the chances do marginally raise for the chance to not find anything good through Kakariko. Fantallis decides to pick up that freestanding 20. Not bad to shore up the wallet in the early game here, especially with that tree pull, even if you don't find any of those 300s, which is, again, a little less likely with all of those keys muddying up the pool. You can still, hopefully, cover yourself in the event that we need to go visit Zora.
And you certainly want to have that first 100 for the bottle merchant. But wow, you don't see that picture pull very often.
Well, again, that's does that count as a tree pull? Was that use the same pool?
I honestly don't know, because I've seen that picture pull so rarely.
I mean, if it does, that's a very heads-up play by Tam there, just milking that 20 rupees for all it's worth, because that is a great pull to see. Those tree pulls are usually only useful in the beginning of the game, and the 20 rupees is probably the best one to get, outside of maybe bombs if you're unlucky. But the rupees can buy you bombs with not that much of a time loss here, as we see Tam going into the shop here.
But look at all the stuff that Fantallis is finding in Blind's Hut in the meantime. I wonder why Tam chose this routing rather than straight to Blind's Hut. I mean, there's a glove. We saw half magic, a pod small key.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the Fantallis' bombs came from, because Tam had none when going into the shop there. Since this is key sanity, and since we're at the beginning, I think we should briefly go over which small keys are crucially important and which ones are garbage.
Yeah, so that pod small key that we found and the Turtle Rock small key that Fantallis just found are both going to be useful. At a bare minimum, if you just want to rush the bosses, you need a pod small key and you need 3 Turtle Rock small keys. You also need the Swamp small key, which basically functions as a big key because it locks the entire dungeon. And for 6 dungeons, you need the big keys. We don't necessarily need the big key for Hera if we have the hook shot, and I'm sure these runners can Hera pot. We don't need it for Swamp or Skull Woods, and we don't need it for Ice Palace as long as you do either the Bomb Jump or Icebreaker. Oh yeah, and we also need the GT big key, of course, and 2 Castle Tower small keys. So
yeah, the Castle Tower small keys are sort of the crucial ones in AD keys. I mean, among others, but those are especially important. In normal key sanity, those simply lock away one Castle Tower small locks both of those item checks, or you can get both of those item checks with just one. When you need to complete it, though, you do need to find the second one. So, yeah, we've got a couple of dungeons with crucial small keys. The Harris small key could be important, but only if there's an item in the basement. A critical item in the basement, I should say. But for the most part, the biggest ones we want to see are, yeah, it's sort of the same boat as Thieves Town. But yeah, the biggest ones to see are Palace of Darkness and Turtle Rock that we need to have a couple for.
Ooh,
there are more than are strictly necessary, but
Fantallis was going to do the race game blind, then realized he was out of bombs. Let's see if Tam.
Yeah,
like,
without boots.
No, Tam's not a check.
Yeah, maps are kind of useful, a little less useful in all dungeons. They do tell you what the dungeon reward is. Getting a quick map check is not going to be so easy here, so shout outs to Duodeca, our restreamer and tracker here, keeping track of all of that for us. Key Sanity is another extra wrinkle on top of watching 2 games at once, so.
Yeah, but since it's all dungeons, the maps are less important. I mean, at some point you need to know when GT will open and when PED will become pullable. But you're going to have to do them all anyway, so it's not like you're looking for, oh, which dungeons can I skip?
Yeah, in a way, it makes the 3 pendants and the 5, 6 the most important maps to find. Because with those, you have all of the information. The flute in the dam, that's very nice.
And the 5, 6, once you have Dark World access, you can go to the bomb shop and the vendor there will tell you where the 5, 6 crystals are.
Yeah, and you can get one of the pendants from Sahasrara, so that really only means that you have to find two maps.
Or else you just
to really tell you all of that. Yeah.
See when the pendants drop.
Of course, nobody likes to see the Ganon's Tower map. And the compasses are nominally useful, but for these runners, it's not really a boon to know how many checks you've done in each dungeon, since they just know that instinctually anyway.
Look at Fantallis. That's the second time he forgot he was out of bombs.
Yeah, I don't think Fantallis went for the vendor to the shop to buy the bombs, so it was sort of running on fumes that whole time. Lingering a bit on this screen, I wonder if it's stream issues. Fantallis was having some internet connectivity issues, so that may be what we're seeing.
Yeah, well, this would actually add up because in the live race channel, he said he was having them at 7:11, and it's now 7:21, so with the 10-minute delay. So yes, that was probably him pausing to reset his internet, because that's what he said he was doing.
No, so it takes a couple seconds there for the team. Not bad, because I do think that Fantallis is actually ahead here in just terms of raw gameplay. This opening is pretty standard. Nothing crazy going on. You do those quick, easy Sphere 0 checks.
But now, Tam's going to activate the flute. Hopefully Fantallis will do the same. Yep, it is just so much faster for getting around the world, especially when you don't have boots.
It also crucially opens up access to the mountain, which isn't quite important yet with the items we have. If the mirror or hookshot show up, then that's going to be a whole load of checks we can get up there, all in logic.
And speaking of the mountain, Tam did find that Hera Big Key in Mini Moldorm Cave, which will allow them to go up Tower of Hera if they do get the mirror and not the hook shot. They don't need to Hera pot.
Yeah, and that's often something that's very handy to do. Is the general wisdom in terms of randomizer is always clear dungeons when you can. It's a bit simpler advice to follow, and you're doing non-key sanity since you have fewer requirements to meet. But the same holds even in key sanity. If you can clear a dungeon that you need to clear, in this case all of them, you do that. Tam for some reason using the double heart beep.
Probably to
interesting
torture
choice.
us.
It's actually I'll appreciate the aesthetics of it. It's a fresh change.
Could also be a strong incentive for them to not take damage so that they don't have to hear it.
Yeah, didn't work in that instance. With the flute, it's not too bad to go back to Ice Rod Cave here, which is one of the biggest boons of getting the flute in early game, is it makes Ice Rod Cave here a little bit less of a trek.
It also makes that Aegina check that Fantallis was going to do but didn't have bombs for easier to get back to.
Yeah, forgetting you're out of bombs early game is one of the easiest mistakes to make, even with higher level runners, because you get so very used to always having them on hand. Because it's uncommon to not have them. We see our second sword on Desert Ledge. Time will tell if that's actually our second sword.
We would need either the mitts and the mirror or the book to get it.
Yeah, it's our second sword right now, but if we come back later, it may be our third or fourth. Tam giving us a look at Aegina's cave. Hyrule Castle Small. That's a moderately useful key, but very much not critical. It opens up some options for how you route that area, but it doesn't really change anything. So Fantallis, if they decide to put it off, is not going to be paying for that.
Yeah, and Tam already did the back of escape, so if they want to do Dark Cross, they're going to get there from the front of escape anyway.
Yeah, and at this point, they might go ahead and do that. Again, it's not in logic. No fire rod, no lamp, but that's going to be no obstacle to these runners. You don't want to orphan a check like that just because it's not in logic.
Logic schmogic, right?
Yeah, it's something that's always good to keep in the back of your mind, because it when you start running low in some of the really nasty seeds, when you start running low on checks to do, knowing what's in logic versus what isn't is often very crucial to keep track of, because it can often lead you right to the correct spot to check next.
Speaking of logic, we just got Dark World access.
That we did.
On Fantallis' side, and Tam will have it very shortly.
Always something that's nice to see relatively early on. It just opens up a lot of extra checks for you to, take a peek at. When you're looking for equipment, trying to get yourself armed, it's nice to be able to go there.
With the flute, it's really easy too, because you can flute to 3 for CAC Portal, you can flute to 5 for Pod Portal.
Yeah, the biggest thing about Dark World access is the fact that Thieves Town is actually a completely free dungeon. It's the lowest requirement of any dungeon in the game, honestly. All you need is the ability to go to the front door, and you can clear the whole thing, as long as you've got a weapon that can kill blind.
You need the big key in Key Sanity.
In Key Sanity, you do need the big key. That's true of almost every dungeon, the exceptions being Swamp Palace and Skullwoods.
But it wouldn't surprise me at all if one or both of these runners decide to clear the front 4 of Thieves anyway, just because so near
Thieves
the portal.
Town is so great in that way, just because the front 4 chests, there are 4 chests that are available very, very quickly. And it's very common, especially in Key Sanity, if you don't have the big key. It's not even really a dungeon dive to do it, especially if you're still at Green Mail or have the mirror, because a death warp or mirror warp out is so trivial to to execute in that dungeon.
So, what is the out of logic chest in Dark Cross that both of our runners are going for?
Yeah, you know, I used to be not a huge fan of doing dark rooms in the dark, but as I've gotten more comfortable with it, I've actually had the pleasure a few times of getting that Dark Cross room and you know, using no sword beam to keep track of my position, just muscle memory going straight to that chest and opening it. It's a good feeling when you just laser in just from memory of the rooms. But yeah, just 50 rupees, nothing exciting, but it's something I find personally fun to execute.
And Fantallis and Tam are both going for Hype Cave, which is a popular first Dark World check if you get your Dark World access through Gloves plus Hammer.
Yeah, it's usually not a bad return. You can get a lot of items in this area going this and then hooking left all the way up to Dig Game. And the upshot, if you have the Gloves and Hammer for Dark World access, there's a mirror, see? So it's already basically paid off. But the biggest boon is if you somehow find the mitts over here, then you can go straight into Village of Outcasts anyway. And if you don't find the mitts, you're usually not too disappointed in what you found in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 checks that you can do. With the mirror, it's 8.
But now what they're going to do is probably check the bomb shop and find out about the 5 and 6. We did see a regular crystal in Pod and a blue pendant in Turtle Rock, so that's at least 2 dungeons we know.
Yeah. Blue pendant
and
Turtle
Mire
Rock.
and Skull Woods.
Okay, so Mire being a crystal means that Samaria has to be available outside of GT. If Mire was another pendant, then we could potentially see the Cane of Samaria being actually in Ganon's Tower. That's the biggest thing with all dungeons that you need to be aware of. Even though you need to clear all dungeons, there could be critical items that are locked behind Ganon's Tower access. In this case, we could be looking at Ice Rod in Ganon's Tower.
And
so you need to keep track of when you're in GT mode, as they call it.
And the other thing, that map check was too fast for me to see what swamp was. I could see something flash there. Did you catch it?
No, I did not. Oh, Christum.
Yeah.
There's a Christum in there. Thanks, Nustria, in chat.
Oh, and there's another TR small key. So yeah, I was going to say, with what you were saying about Mire, we can make exactly the same conclusion about the Fire Rod, which if we only knew that TR was a pendant, we'd worry about whether the Fire Rod was potentially in GT, but knowing that Skull Woods is a crystal, the Fire Rod has to be outside it as well.
Yeah, so all dungeons really rewards that intimate knowledge of you know the intricate lock and key system that a Zelda randomizer really is. It's just a bunch of keys and a bunch of locks, and you don't know when you're gonna find the keys that unlock each lock. But knowing what they lock away is really crucial in an old dungeons run, really.
And since the second castle tower key, as we discussed earlier, the only thing it locks away is Aga. It's basically the ice rod of all dungeons.
Yeah, and I think that's why AD keys, all dungeons key sanity, is particularly popular. Just because the all dungeons requirement kind of actually makes the ice rod a little less of a last find item, but you still have that full completion kind of thing when you need to clear Aga's Tower as well.
So now Tam's doing the early catfish check, and that is a key to Mire, so
I really like
useful.
this, honestly. With that mirror showing up, this is a great route to take. Doing catfish with mirror is something that you always like to have the opportunity to do. It would be nice if flippers were here too, but at the very least you get this information, or you can Ancilla delete the book. That's an important item. We may well need that, possibly not, but at this point, very well maybe need that.
But unless you're planning for Ancilla deletion, you can't get it right now.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. Well, yeah, I would be surprised at this point. I don't know much about Ancilla glitching, but I feel like it's pretty hard to do with just the bombs.
Yeah, usually it's
Usually,
bombs
I
plus.
expect to use arrows. It's some garbage with the memory. Shovel, that's a nice consolation prize.
Yeah, especially with the mirror, Tam can loop it in when they do like K45 and Stumpy and all that.
Yeah, and at this point, we are hoping that the myths show up before we need to go to desert. Not a bad bet at this point, since we do have every other item required for desert without book. All we need is a second glove, so not too bad to just leave that and not even attempt to get that out of logic.
And Tam
Chances
makes
are
a
good we're
liar
not going
out
to
of
have to
me.
go back for that. Hey, 20
I
rupees?
was-
I always get hype over 20 rupees.
I was
Now, is that...
convinced they were going to loop it in with Stumpy. Sorry, what did you say?
I saw that that text box there. I'm not sure what that was from.
Me neither. Don't think I've ever seen that before.
To answer the question, I do like craisins. Yeah, and now, so we were praising the mirror catfish play from Tam. Fantallis, on the other hand, going straight for the mountain. As mentioned before, hammer plus mirror does allow access to the right side of Death Mountain, which is a really nice area to get to. And honestly, Tam isn't too far behind on this.
Okay, you don't want our 10 hours in the basement? Here, take our 10 hours in the map chest.
Hey, 10 arrows are 10 arrows. At least they fit in the quiver.
And we get to see the vanilla way up, which you don't see that often since Harapop became a thing.
Yeah. I mean, there are some people that prefer to not... I mean, I wouldn't say prefer, but still have not taken the time to learn to do the Harapot. It's a little more common with the slightly less finicky and quicker hook speed setup. But without the hook shot, I mean, it's not like Icebreaker. You don't hold out on the chance that you can do Harapot.
Hey, so remember how we were talking about Thieves Town frequently being an early Dark World check?
Yeah, that's it's possibly going to happen. Rewarded for choosing to do this first, I suppose.
Yeah, so now they can do everything but the big chest, which is locked by the small key, which we don't have. I'm also noticing this is a very health poor seed. We're over 20 minutes in and still on 5 hearts green mail.
Yeah. Yeah, that's though the sort of flip side of that is we have found a decent amount of keys. You can just as easily go this far and still have your pockets empty in terms of keys, which if you haven't played a lot of Key Sanity, kind of mucks with your routing brain a little bit. Because you feel like, okay, well, now I just start doing dungeons, and then you realize, well, I can't do these dungeons because I don't have the keys. It's an easy thing to forget about.
Hey, vanilla heart container.
Now, sort of on the note of Thieves Town, one of the reasons it's such a uniquely nice early Dark World dungeon is because there's almost no item you can get outside of boots that really makes it any faster. It's pretty linear. There aren't any skips in it, and so it's just as fast when you have fighter sword and green mail as it is when you have hook shot, bow, all of the bells and whistles. So it's really nice to be able to go in there. It's got 4 items in standard. It's got even more than that in Key Sanity. I think it would up it up to let's see, 8. If I'm counting that right, 1 small key and then the map compass big key. So I've always had a soft spot for Thieves Town in Rando.
And, you get almost no benefit from go moding it.
Right. You get to skip a couple of checks that take a couple seconds each. We do find our bow here, which is actually kind of interesting because it gives us uh, access to more of pod than we would ordinarily be able to do. Especially gives us the opportunity to logically go around the bow locked side and maybe use that one small key we have elsewhere in the dungeon, which could be very important if we get an item like mitts there.
Yeah, with the big key, you could even theoretically rush Helmasaur.
Yeah, in pod, that's not a good play early game. I wouldn't say that's a good play in the early game. Mid to late game, sure, you maybe want to just, hey, I'll just go for it. There's only one other thing I need to find before go mode, But at this point, that would be a questionable play because without the small keys, basically every small key in a dungeon is shuffled into the regular item pool, and in pod that makes that dungeon extremely rich.
So for other optional but helpful small keys, that Desert Palace key that Fantallis just got logically locks desert, and in practice, if you don't have the small key, you wouldn't check the right side because you'd have to steal a key from the back and then you couldn't get to Landmo. So now that they have the desert small key, they can go full clear desert as soon as they get access. Well, they still need the big key, but if the big key and desert access happens.
Yeah, that desert small key is another interesting thing about all dungeons versus if it was just a standard defeat Ganon. If desert was a pendant, there would be virtually no consequence for stealing that first small key. All dungeons kind of forces you to maybe make that gamble. It's like, okay, is this one small key worth these two items in the right side of desert? Because if you steal that small key and use it to open up those small chests, or those treasure chests, regular chests, they're fairly standard sized. You then are required to find the desert small wherever it is in the world to be able to clear the dungeon.
And
so it's a very risky play.
You will sometimes see runners save scum it for that reason.
That's very true. Save scumming is legal, and I'm not sure I'd say encouraged, but I mean, you pay the time for it, so it's fair play. Especially with mirror, I always like desert with mirror, just because of the option of going right side and mirroring back to that left hand entrance where you want to be instantly. The save scum makes a little less sense in that regard. Desert, again, with only one small key, doesn't become that much more of a rich dungeon in key sanity versus something like Palace of Darkness or Turtle Rock. Or, Speak of the Devil, Skull Woods here. Skull Woods is another dungeon where you do actually need two small keys, but they are available from enemies in pots. So you need two of them in the back of the dungeon, which Fantallis actually does not have access to right now without the fire rod. But there's a key under a pot and a key inside a Gibdo in the back that can be picked up, so you actually don't need to find any small keys to clear this dungeon. If you find one, it can sort of make clearing the dungeon a little quicker or more efficient. But if you have the fire rod, you can go mode it even in key sanity.
So meanwhile, Tam is dipping eastern, which is interesting. Again, that bow that they have out, if this were not key sanity, you find the bow, you just full clear eastern. But without the big key, you can't even get to the bow locked parts, let alone Armos Knights.
Yeah, I believe they left a portal outside. So this is an eastern pod double dip, which sort of increases the value of the play by quite a bit.
Sure, but I'd probably do pod first. Maybe they're hoping to
Yeah.
find pod keys.
Yeah, you're more likely to find the Eastern big in pod than the pod big in Eastern. Though, on the flip side, a greater percentage of Eastern is in logic right now. There are a couple. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 checks in pod that are out of logic right now. That said, it still does make a little more sense to check pod first because, screw logic. There's another sword.
And there is Ether Medallion, which, of course, we haven't seen Misery Mire or Turtle Rock. We don't know whether or not we'll need it. We won't know until we get the Titan's Mitts. So now Fantallis is better positioned for when he goes to pod because he will have an extra key compared to Tam.
Yeah, pod is one of those dungeons where to full clear, you do need a fair number of keys.
Did you say a fair number of pod keys? Maybe they're all in Thieves at this rate.
Maybe I should say an unfair number of pod smalls.
But we do still need that big.
Yeah, that's another wrinkle in key sanity is the big key can lock away a varying number of items. In every dungeon, it locks the big chest, but in pod, it locks just the big chest and the boss. Everything else is available without it. So it's still a very high-value dungeon without it.
Thieves Town was such the play, though. I mean... Oh, but there is a TR small key, which we are going to need. Oh, did Tam not get the second one that Fantallis got?
Yeah, must not have.
But, yeah, so if you can hammer yump, and if you route pod so that you never open the middle door in front, you can full clear the dungeon on 4 small keys, and Fantallis is now up to 3. So parallel hellways on the 2 runners. And Tam's probably going to whack the whack-a-moles, and I'm guessing open the back. That opens 3 more checks. Oh, now that's interesting. Pod keys in Thieves Town, so of course Thieves Town key in pod.
Of course.
So that will give Tam the final check when they come here. I doubt Fantallis will come back to Thieves Town just to do that big chest.
Yeah, and that can bite you. More likely than not, it won't. A slightly interesting strat there from Tam to get to that bridge the wrong way. Usually you will see runners use a Pegasus Boots bonk. Not an option for either of these runners as the boots have not shown up yet, but a bomb jump gets the job done nearly as well. Just as well, not quite as quickly.
Yeah, it's relatively rare that runners are in that situation where they're both short a key so that they don't want to open the middle door and don't have boots.
Yeah, key sanity really changes a lot of little things about the game in really subtle ways. A lot of changes are pretty obvious. The need to find the swamp small in addition to Flipper's hookshot and mirror. Well, Flipper's and mirror most importantly to do anything at all in the dungeon. But also little tiny things like that, where the keys being in the dungeon themselves make certain things trivial in standard, whereas in key sanity, certain decisions become a lot more important.
Ooh, and Fantallis loses the blind script a bit. He should be okay here.
Yeah, blind is one of those bosses where the quick kill versus the quick kill strat versus the not so quick kill is it's not a huge loss of time. So it's not a huge deal, but you do like to save those little bits of time when you can from the rehearsed plays.
It also depends, how much health you have and at what point you get off script. So Tam is going to hammer Yump, which will open up 2 more checks in the dark maze. Still can't get that big chest without the big key.
I wonder if we're going to see Fantallis. Oh, the boots showing up in the dark maze there. We could see Fantallis go back to the Zora area and pick up that book. It would be a stretch of a play, but it does grant logical access to desert at this point, which, with those out of logic silvers and boots, that's a good haul from that dark room. There's a lot to keep track of going on right now. That's a good set of items to get from that dark room. If you're breaking logic, that's what you like to see. Yeah, we are not seeing the book picked up. It looks like.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much left to check.
We may see it. You obviously are going to go for the fairy here, because that's 2 in logic checks. But again, that's one of the reasons that you keep the logic in mind. Fairy is completely useless, of course. Yeah, I think at this point, if you're coming this way anyway, you take the time to go pick up that book, because it does open up desert. And at this point, if you haven't seen the gloves, if you haven't seen that second glove upgrade, it could be in desert. You don't want to hold out on that.
Yeah, well, and there could be something on a tablet. I thought you were talking about Tam doing a water walk over there now that they have the boots.
Oh, yeah.
Fantallis hadn't
be
seen the book yet.
Silly. Yeah, and the flippers showed up where? I was having some network issues, so I missed the spot on stream where that actually occurred. Was that?
I unfortunately missed it as well.
I believe we were in Themestown. I saw chat pointed out. So
yeah, was it on blind? Because
yeah, it was somewhere in the middle of Themestown, I believe.
Chat also pointing out that while we weren't looking, Tam picked up silvers because you should be able to take down a Gibdo with 1 arrow. Ah, okay.
So yeah, Tam going to be picking up those boots momentarily here, I would imagine, since the fire rod hasn't shown up. You do not really,
and it speeds up so many boss fights to have the silvers.
I mean, the most notable being Vitreous, or Vitreous, I suppose. I always say Vitreous, but I recently looked up and found out it's wrong.
But can also be helpful on Armos Knights, Lanmo, Helma, Argus.
Yeah, I have seen high-level runners go for the fire rod strats on Lanmos, just because it's easier to pull off, and you lose very little time over the silvers. But it's sort of a matter of personal preference, what you've practiced, what you're comfortable with.
And desert is our green pendant. Oh, I guess that was already marked. Right. Tam checked it.
Yeah, so we still haven't found the Swamp Small. Otherwise, we have everything else we need to do Swamp Palace. Swamp Palace is usually considered a very lucrative dungeon. By base item check count, it has the highest number of checks. But in Key Sanity, that's actually not the case anymore, since it only has 1 small key in a chest. Its value is only increased by 1 over every other dungeon, which gets, like Pod gets all of those small keys. Those get items instead. So Swamp actually doesn't get that big of a boost from the key sanity item expansion.
It's still something. Back to the, always be clearing rule. If you can clear it, you generally do.
Yeah, however, Swamp is one of those dungeons that is very much helped by a Go mode play. If you're in Go mode by the time you get to Swamp, you can save a lot of time over, if you're not.
Oh, so Tam's giving us a look at King's Tomb, one of those boot-locked locations. And we find the cape. I don't think either of them checked Bumper Ledge, did they?
I think so, because Tam mirrored to get to Bonk Rocks.
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine that we saw it check before that.
Yeah, it would be odd to not check it.
Because Tam's going back. It was probably not important because Tam is the
Tam's probably going to Thievestown now. Nope.
We're gonna clear out the village first.
Get their ether.
Duodeca pointing out that that is the vanilla location for Cape, something that is easy to forget if you play a lot of Rando. And where actually is that item in vanilla, especially items like the Cape?
Brewer's Flips. Where was Ether then? So I guess Flippers weren't in Thieves.
Admit that I missed that one. On a similar note, I'm not entirely sure where Tam picked up Quake.
That was in Pod. Or Eastern,
okay, so
somewhere over there.
Will be finding that. Along with the ever-important boots and silver arrows.
And Tam's probably wishing that they had done Thievestown first. But we'll see if that big chest in Thievestown pays off.
Certainly, it certainly gives a lot more options to Fantallis here, and because when Tam went to Pod, there was just the one small key, correct?
Yeah, Tam did Pod on one small key, and Fantallis went in with 3.
Yeah, so with the 3 small key, Fantallis has the option of, opening that front door. Best case scenario, the big key is going to be somewhere in Pod, and those 3 keys can be used to actually full clear the dungeon here, which would be ideal. Not something you hope for, but it's possible. So you probably would want to leave that front door locked.
Did that answer your question about Quake, by the way?
Yes, it certainly did. So we see here, this is where Tam decided to do the hammer yump and go over there without spending an extra small key. Fantallis won't have to do that. Fantallis can also access the Harmless Hellway. A couple out of logic checks down here.
But, so we'll see if Fantallis decides to expend the key or do the hammer yump and save the key for something else. Oh,
yeah, I feel like the right play would be, yeah, you save the key for something else because there's no way to get this without a key. There is a way to get the other stuff without a key. So if you have the hammer yump in your pocket, you don't sit on something like that. Especially in this situation where, okay, you've got 1 key left, you may as well spend it to get an item.
And at this point, most Invitational League runners know hammer yump. I guess he misplaced it.
I mean, there's a fair number of open league runners that do the hammer yump. It's not a free glitch by any means. It's a basic bomb jump. It's a precise bomb jump, but a bomb jump nonetheless. But you know, advanced tech like that is becoming more and more common.
Yeah, no, I've been. Whoa! Oh no! Vanilla
Oof.
Myths.
That's fantastic for Tam, because that's the one check that Fantallis couldn't do. So Fantallis does get the bonus of being able to clear more of Pod, but for not much return. And that one Thieves Town Small that was in Pod that Tam picked up, rewarded with the gloves. And it's going to be a while before Fantallis gets back to that.
And that's where the silvers were in Dark Maze. But
And
yeah,
that's what we love about Rando, right? Because the numbers play isn't always the right play. Numerically, you know, going to Thieves Town first was the right play because you get so many more checks in Pod that you have available. All that flexibility is really nice, but that one small key opens up possibly the most crucial item in the game. In terms of actually, you know, getting into actual go mode, I think the mitts is the hardest item to preclude from a go mode.
it locks so much that Fantallis might be forced back there sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean it's possible, but the kinds of things that it locks the Smith chain, it locks a couple of access points. And it locks Dark Death Mountain. Dark Death Mountain is the big one. If there's something important in Dark Death Mountain, then you sort of need to pick up those mitts. If Dark Death Mountain doesn't have anything super critical, you can get away with putting off that check for a long time.
That's a big if. Because we haven't seen things like the Swamp Small Key, and for all we know, that's on Dark Death Mountain.
Yeah, and so a lot of times when you make a mistake like that, you can get bailed out by the seed in ways like that, you know, where you do need to check a certain area sooner or later, so you do need to find that sooner rather than later. But, you know, sometimes you can really just get away with not finding something for a really long time.
So basically, the more things Fantallis gets locked out of at this point, the better, because it'll force him back to Thieves Town the sooner.
Yeah, and just a reminder, But We're Buddies still sitting at 0 points here. Fantallis really needs to put a win on their board here. A lot of weight to carry.
So yeah, what does Fantallis have left? He has the tablets. He has, you know, Bonk Rocks, Graveyard Ledge, King's Tomb over there. He has the Front of Desert. Or maybe, yeah, I wonder if he's reading that Thieves Town Small Key and is just gonna go for it, or if this portal is so that he can do Graveyard Ledge along with Bonk Rocks and King's Tomb.
Yeah, it's really anyone's guess at this point. It's not having mitts and returning to this area too is kind of a pain, just because you have to go this roundabout way. If I recall, Fantallis did do the front of Skullwoods.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure what he's doing, unless he thinks this is
probably
faster
going to that King's Tomb Bonk Rocks area.
Yeah, I guess maybe it was
the fastest way when you don't have the mitts. This is the fastest way.
Yeah, I haven't timed it out. And again, with that book, if, say, Fantallis winds up on Bombo, so Fantallis is going to blind pull Lumberjack because he didn't check it when Tam did. Oh no, he's going to check it first. Right, we haven't done Aga 1 yet. I'm tired.
Another interesting thing to point out, Tam checked that at the beginning of the race. Fantallis now checks it after finding the boots, which I feel is a good time to check lumberjack, because you know that if you don't have boots, you can't get that item early anyway. But once you have boots, all you really need to do is find the items that put that in logic, and then whatever item is behind that is in logic too. But if as long as you're missing boots, knowing that there's an item there is not much use to you, even if you have all of the ag and logic.
So four things that are locked by Mitts in this particular seed. That Eastern Big Key is locked by Mitts.
That's certainly a big one.
And it looks like if Tam's going to the trouble of doing Hobo now, I think they're probably going to go to the trouble of getting Book right after.
Yeah. Did we see Fantallis use that book yet? I don't
Nope.
think we did.
So what will Fantallis do next? I mean, I'm trying to think what he even has besides the tablets and desert.
Well, King's Tomb for one.
He's in King's Tomb. I meant after King's Tomb.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot left, and it's really a shame that that Thieves Town big chest is such a pain in the rear end to go and do.
Oh, he isolated Catfish.
Did he? I thought we saw Fantallis go for this earlier.
No, Fantallis did Zora and stuff like that, but he got there via Whirlpool, not via Mirror.
Okay, I must be remembering the other half of the screen then.
Yeah, Tam did Catfish and then Mirrored.
Okay, then I'm just remembering.
But didn't have the flippers.
Which is no surprise. You know, the funniest thing about that Vanilla Mitts is it actually had to be Vanilla Mitts, because there's no other way to get to there without having found the first glove upgrade first. Sometimes it's like, vanilla items, like, well, it doesn't have to be vanilla. But those mitts actually do have to be vanilla.
Oh, and Tam saved a portal by Gary and is now going to check Bombos.
That's a large brain. I'm
guessing that's what Fantallis is doing too, using this portal.
That's actually a really large brain there. To take purple chest to the thief in the desert, have the foresight to leave your portal there, go check those flippers checks, and then take that route all the way up to the book to come back and check Bombo's tablet. That's not a route you have to make very often. It's not really a set play. That's something you sort of come up with on the fly, I feel.
And that was way too fast to check of Meyer Medallion for me to see what it was.
Oh, there's our ice rod. Not gonna be hunting for that.
Chat thinks maybe Quake. And here's the mirror to grab what's now the tempered sword. As you said, it wouldn't necessarily be the master sword by the time the runners get it.
Oh, it's transformed! Incredible! It's like these swords are magic.
So now the runners are actually going to converge on desert, oddly enough.
Yeah, Tam is going to be able to lift those rocks to get to the back with a little bit more berries than Fantallis is going to be capable of with those with the other glove.
We're not going to the back without the big key.
Yeah, that's true. But if they want to pick up more small keys, I was trying to. I was trying to lean into their equipment difference here.
Small key collection. No, the big thing is that, Tam was able to do Meyer Shed, and we'll probably do Checkerboard. Oh, and there's our TR big
Oh,
key.
that desert small key making a difference. There's the lamp. That puts those boots and silver back in logic. So now there's nothing that we have out of logic right now. Now that mirror has been picked up.
And what's Fantallis gonna have after this? Like, literally Ether Tablet and Thieves' Big Chest, I think.
So there's Ether Tablet, Spike Cave, Hera Basement.
Oh,
So
right, I forgot he got the small key to
whether
Hera.
you decide to go, if you decide to go all the way up there, or do you decide to go back to Thieves Town, that's a tough call to make. If it were me, I'd bank on one of those 3 checks on the mountain, maybe being the mitts and being able to do the right side of the mountain right away. Versus going all the way back to Thieves just for the big chest. That going back to Thieves for just the big chest is a big time investment for 1 check. Which is why it's so awful to orphan an item there.
And I guess Meyer was Quake after all, since Tam just used it to get in. And yeah, another unfortunate piece of routing for Fantallis. Without the mitts, he can't do the route that Tam did. He has to go all the way through desert to get around to Desert Ledge.
Yeah, even though the Cane of Samaria isn't in hand right now, so this dungeon isn't clearable, a Mire dip is not always that bad, especially in Key Sanity when you've got a whole bunch of small key chests in here that become potentially important items. With none of the small keys actually being necessary. And Tam showing why it's nice to actually have a small key coming in. You can go straight to the left side, hit that switch, and sort of get a lot of these checks done a lot more efficiently.
Well, it looks like you are right. Fantallis is going to hard last location those Titans mitts.
Yeah, and it's you can't fault Fantallis for this. Again, that 1 chest in French Vanilla Cane of Samaria. Excuse me for interrupting my train of thought, but that's go mode for Misery Mire for Tam right here. So that's a nice find. That really makes that last location on those mitts really painful for Fantallis. Again, going up the mountain again for 3 items makes a lot more sense than going back into Thieves Town for just the big chest, since you really have to do the entire dungeon just for it.
Yeah, and so, like, Fantallis basically has to hope at this point that either Tam last location something down the road and winds up doing this coffee break as well, or alternatively that, Fantallis somewhere down the line, like maybe decides to skip Meyer cutscene and doesn't get the bloomerang, but okay.
It's not over until we see Swamp Small. And crucially, the Agus Tower small keys. We've seen neither of those yet. So if one of those 3 keys is in coffee break room here, that's actually not bad for Fantallis, because that's something that Tam might opt to skip on the trip up here, given that Dark Death Mountain is available.
Speaking of such things, they do both have the Turtle Rock Big Key out of Desert. I'm looking at the tracker here.
No luck. Piece of heart. Another pod small. That's it's a nice thing to put in your pocket. Makes going back there a little bit handier. Another thing to note is that Tam will probably end up getting a little sidetracked going back to pod, since all of those checks will be available, and Fantallis already did those.
And we did not need our second Ice Palace key.
And to clear some things up for those just entering chat, Fantallis going back into Hera for that coffee break chest. That is the only remaining check in Hera since both runners completed the dungeon earlier. Along with the big key, so no Hera pot. So they did a full clear of the rest of the dungeon.
Where the heck is Fantallis going?
To the Dark World via the portal south of Link's house.
Well, yes.
Anything beyond that, I can't say.
Did he never check Pyramid? Maybe he never checked Pyramid.
Probably not.
Got a hard last location, the Mitts. He is not going to be happy when he sees them.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that is definitely one of those locations that it doesn't often bite you to not be able to open that big chest your first time through, but when it does, it's very hard to come back to. It's in a similar position to the left side of Swamp Palace, because it takes so long to go back in for it that if you decide to skip it, and with Thieves Town you sometimes don't have a choice, but you really don't like to go back for it because it's such a time investment. You don't want to go back until it's absolutely your last option. And again, Fantallis getting the first chest in Agus Tower here. Just a bottle of blue. It's nice to see, but not going to save any time.
And sorry, folks, about the tracker app acting up. Rest assured, someday the app will wake up and suddenly you'll see 10 things filled out at once for both runners.
So we have something interesting going on. Tam is, unless the tracker app is really acting up and I missed something, Tam is going into Swamp Palace to check one chest.
Well, Fantallis just went into Aga Tower to check one chest. But yes, it is interesting that Tam hasn't done, say, Dark Death Mountain.
I mean, it sort of makes sense. You really like to be able to do a whole lot when you go up the mountain.
Apparently we missed Tam getting the Swamp Small.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I miss a lot of things when I'm commentating, and that makes this play make a lot more sense. To go into Swamp for a single item is usually a play you make when you feel you've lost a lot of time in a race. But with that small key in hand, that's a full clear of Swamp on the table. I actually wouldn't be super surprised if we see Tam skipped left side here. Because let's see, where was the ice rod? It was in Meyer Shed, so Tam did pick that.
I mean,
Tam's looking for the fire rod.
Meyer area is clearly the play.
Yeah, so picking up those mitts in Thieves Town was very huge for Tam. Fantallis about to pick up the mitts, gonna be a little bit behind, but we'll see how quickly that time can be made up. Because with all of the rest of the stuff that Fantallis has cleared out, that's gonna be a lot more options for Tam later if this does become an Agus Tower small key hunt.
Now, the thing is, these runners probably have about comparable execution. Sometimes you see a seed like this and you're like, oh, well, the runner who looks behind has the better execution, so they might catch up. But I'd say these two runners are fairly even on execution, so it's going to be hard for Fantallis to catch up that way.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to, like I said, if it comes down to a small key hunt. Because those are the great equalizers in AD keys. You like to see, if you're behind, if you're rooting for an underdog, I'll say, you do like to see those small keys sort of hide in obscure locations that both runners are sort of guaranteed to check later on. And so Fantallis, having last location those mitts, might make some more aggressive routing and skip some of the stuff that Tam sort of had the freedom to do for thoroughness. For instance, like you said, Meyer cutscene chest. Fantallis might decide to skip that. Left side swamp. Tam might decide to skip. Or Fantallis might decide to skip. Excuse me.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tam's doing it right now, and
Yeah. So yeah, Tam's doing
fortunately
it.
for
Fantallis might decide to skip it. So that's a big time save.
right.
That's a huge chunk of time.
I'm just saying, fortunately for Fantallis, none of these out-of-the-way locations had anything in case he decides to skip them.
Yeah, so that's good news for Talus fans, Fantallis fans.
Now, the problem here is if Fantallis doesn't want to go into Mire without the cane.
Yeah. But again, that can sort of swing the other way. Fantallis making a good move here and finding that Eastern big key in the purple chest. It can swing the other way. Again, when you last location one item, you're a lot more likely to make those, you only live once kind of plays. It wasn't a bad play from Tam either, not knowing that it was whether or not it was in there. Just by virtue of, Mire in Key Sanity is a fairly item-rich dungeon. It's kind of similar to Thieves Town, honestly, in Key Sanity. A lot of items that are fairly quick to get to. You have that slight delay with that sort of obligatory opening section. Fantallis opting to take that small key, or the big key rather, and clear Eastern Palace. I don't dislike this. It's a little unfortunate not having the pod small, so you can't combo these together, which Tam is potentially going to get the opportunity to do if that big key shows up.
Okay, just to make something clear to chat, the tracker app is not updating for some reason. I can confirm that Duo, our tracker, has marked all of these recent finds and dungeon clears, and the app is just not updating on the restream.
Yeah, it's almost as though all of these tools were invented by people who love Link to the Past so much that they're willing to mangle it to their own ends. This is actually a fantastic community achievement that we're even sitting here watching any of this right now, watching a deer fight against a shy guy here in Link to the Past. So those credits that everybody by at this point scrolls past has a lot of very important names in it. So huge shout outs to everybody who makes all of this happen. I wasn't paying super close attention to Swamp, but I don't think Tam found anything major in there.
I mean, there aren't too many major things we could find. There's the second castle tower key and Fire Rod.
Fire Rod and some keys. A couple of big keys we do need to find. We do need to find Pod Big, and I guess we don't need Ice Palace Big with that Keen of Samaria that showed up in it.
Desert Big.
Desert Big we still need. 2 Agus Tower Smalls. Yeah, we don't technically need any Ice Palace Smalls.
There's our 4th TR key, so if we were to go in there, we could check Lava Chest.
Yep. Though if we were to go in there, and that's another thing about Key Sanity, too. You can get relatively far in Turtle Rock without the Fire Rod, so the Fire Rod can actually be pretty deep in TR. It's not like Standard, where the small key logic has to work out in a certain way, which means that, most of the time you can't find Fire Rod deep in TR. In this, there's a much less slim chance of that occurring. Fantallis probably going to dive into Mire at this point. Again, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of items in there in Key Sanity.
So yeah, I'm hopeful that Fantallis will decide to dip Mire anyway and then discover he can clear it.
Yeah, at this point, it's looking like a lot of those keys are going to be on Dark Death Mountain. Keys in the Fire Rod are going to be on Dark Death Mountain or in Turtle Rock. In Key Sanity, as I was saying earlier, the Fire Rod actually only locks 3 of the Turtle Rock checks. The boss and those 2 on the right side on the first floor. In Standard, the key logic makes that a little more complicated and brings a lot of probability stuff into it. But in Key Sanity, it's you know, we've got enough keys already that that's not going to matter too much.
Yeah, I mean, you can have the keys fall just right in a standard seed to be able to get to Laser Bridge without the Fire Rod. It's just rare. Usually, if you can do that, it means there's something on Laser Bridge that the seed wants you to have.
Yeah, and it's also things like that key sanity kind of trips you up a little bit if you're really used to sort of subconsciously reading the logic of a seed, which is a skill that a lot of these high tier runners have sort of honed to a perfection. It's one of those things that you sort of have to acclimate to when you start playing key sanity. Is a lot of those hunches that you sort of get and maybe don't pay attention to, sort of all of a sudden don't work anymore.
Oh, by the way, I also realized by process of elimination, Ice Palace must be our third pendant.
I would say that's accurate, since we did see a crystal fall down after defeating Armos Knights.
And Tam gets dead rocked. Yeah, Tam's running out of dungeons. No Fire Rod to do Skullwoods or Ice Palace. No big keys to finish Pod or Desert. The mountain's basically their best play.
And as you mentioned, with Ice Palace being our last pendant, that opens up the very real the very real possibility. Turtle Rock is also Bombos could be in Ganon's Tower, but Skullwoods is a crystal, so we do need to find the Fire Rod before Ganon's Tower is available. So, yeah, Fire Rod can be hidden, but not that hidden.
So now we get to see, does Fantallis skip the cutscene and save himself half a minute?
It depends, because you can say, okay, I've lost quite a bit of time. I'm gonna take this. And go, or you can say, I can't afford to make that mistake twice, which it looks like Fantallis is saying here. Both plays completely defensible in my opinion. It's really a hard position to be in. That's why people hate last locationing things so much, because there's no right answer in that situation. Until you've made it, then it becomes clear what the right answer would have been. But before you know what you're about to find here in cutscene chest, it's like, do you want to leave the Fire Rod here? No. A moment of silence for that cutscene. Yeah, and so we do see Tam doing the coffee break, which is actually good news for Fantallis, given that it was garbage, when we saw it earlier, because that means that Tam is now also losing that time. So with all of these checks being cleaned up, this is actually sort of eating into Tam's lead, because these are all checks that Fantallis sort of did prior to last locationing that item. So the more of these that Tam actually does after this fact here, the better that is for Fantallis, because that means the cost of that last location is sort of decreased here. It's not as bad now.
But all told,
given that Tam is now spending this time.
All told, Tam was able to take advantage of those Titan's mitts to do somewhat better routing earlier on. So even if Tam loses the time doing all those checks that Fantallis already did, they still have the time advantage simply from having been able to do better routing with the mitts.
Yeah, that's for sure. Especially with an item like mitts. Mitts is a terrible item to last location in that respect. But for the silver lining, for any of you rooting for the underdog here, again, but we're buddies still at 0 points in this tournament. That's definitely something to keep in mind, just in general when watching these seeds too, because it may look like something is unequivocally bad for one of the runners and good for the other, but some of that saved time can actually disappear quite quickly, given the position of the rest of the items that we need to find. Tam again deciding it's not worth it to skip any of those checks on Death Mountain here.
But now we'll see some new stuff with Dark Death Mountain.
Yeah, and that's sort of the flip side. Tam is able to do Dark Death Mountain on the same trip as checking those 3, which is quite a bit more efficient.
Would have been something if Turtle Rock had turned out to be Bombos.
Wouldn't it, though?
Because that could have, you know, reduced the number of possible locations for the Fire Rod.
Well, I think the possible number of locations for the Fire Rod has drastically decreased as we see it there in Hookshot Cave. That was available as, well, I guess as soon as the myths showed up. Because you technically don't need the hookshot to get to that chest. That is one of the sort of logic breaking checks that is actually accounted for in the randomizer logic. Dark rooms without fire, not accounted for in logic. That one chest in Hookshot Cave without hookshot, in logic.
And we also got a desert big key in there, so this climb was absolutely necessary for further progression in the light world.
Yeah, it's really, though, a matter of time now before Fantallis decides to go up there, because there's not really much else Fantallis can do. Again, sort of the silver lining to... it's sort of the silver lining to a last locationing an item is it's like, well, okay, well, I last location that, but it sort of makes the path forward pretty clear afterwards. Key sanity does throw a wrench in that. As I mentioned before, a lot of the sort of things that you can sort of read to sort of understand the logic of the seed sort of go out the window in key sanity. So sometimes last location can be a blessing in disguise in a more standard seed, where, you know, it sort of lays out your route like an open book. And if there's a particularly strange item placement, then you can end up with the person who didn't last location coming across that rather late. But it's still nice to not last location things. I think that's the moral of our story here.
So we are going to see a full clear of Turtle Rock here.
Yeah, meanwhile, you know, full clear of Turtle Rock, you can save some time by go moding it. I don't imagine we'll see Fantallis go moding it, because the item loadout will be extremely similar. Fantallis may, though, decide to skip the left side of Swamp. Again, it's a common skip, but again, in Key Sanity, it's a little more risky because there's very little stopping small keys from being over there. In Standard, you sort of have the option of, you know, if you open the first couple chests and don't see any of the dungeon items, then it's like, well, it's a pretty good gamble that maybe we hope that they're just dungeon items over there. No matter what in Key Sanity, those 2 chests are going to have something that you could need. And you know that from the start of the seed. So it's a little less common to skip that in Key Sanity.
So yeah, here's probably where the biggest go mode time save would be in Turtle Rock that you wouldn't do the lava chest here, and the second biggest would be skipping the big chest.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So once you get used to how much time save there is in things, because it doesn't, at first blush, it doesn't feel like a huge time save. Not bonking, there would have been a small time save. But, you know, those screen transitions actually really add up. As a player, you're so used to just sort of tuning that out. But as you play more and sort of get more and more in tune with how much time things take you, you realize just how much time a single screen transition takes.
Now, the problem with the tracker being down is it's easy for me to forget exactly what we still need. Obviously, the pod big key, we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I think since the Fire Rod showed up, it's the Pod Big Key and the Aga Tower Smalls. That's really what we're looking for, because we did find the Desert Big Key. We have, and I think we have all the other small keys that we need.
So here's Fantallis doing left side swamp, so unfortunately he will not be making up any time over here.
Yeah, and again, it's not a bad play to check over here. Because again, in this situation, when you last location mitts, you don't want to additionally leave one or both of the Aga Tower Smalls over on left side swamp. Just the possibility that there's something over here. Left side swamp in particular, because it is 2 checks. If both of them are always potentially necessary, it's a really hard sell to skip it.
So we've talked a bit about the stakes for Fantallis and But We're Buddies, but we haven't as much talked about Did You Check Your Boot and how they're doing. And this is fascinating because there's a 5-way tie for second place in the division, and they're a game out of first. So it's going to
This
be
is a very close. Despite the score disparity between these two teams, this is a very close division.
Yeah, it's going to be a battle until the end for which 3 get to make the playoffs. And the funny thing is, last season, the division Did You Check Your Boot was in had like late in the game a 5-way tie for first. So they're very used to 5-way ties by now.
Oh yeah, no strangers to competing under pressure. Another interesting thing to point out, since our only go mode items are the Palace of Darkness Big Key, we did see that has shown up. Tam has that. So with the only go mode items being the Agus Tower Smalls, I would expect the play here just go. You go, you do GT, because chances are fairly good that they're in there. If you're in, because we are now in GT mode, as they like to call it, that means that you can enter GT. You don't need anything else to clear Ganon's tower. And with the number of checks that are in there, if all you're looking for is Aga Tower Smalls, at this stage, that's the last thing in the seed that they're doing. So you just go and hope you find them along the way. If you have to clean up afterwards, too bad, but chances are fairly good your opponent's going to do the exact same thing.
So I don't quite get what was going on with that block. Did it just get stuck?
I missed it.
Because
I'll be
usually,
frank.
if you're doing diver down, if you put the block in the wrong place and can't fix it, oh, there's another pod key. Nice. But yeah, if you put the block in the wrong place and can't fix it, you just, break the block with another cane hit and then make another one. But the fact that Fantallis was just kind of standing there struggling with it leads me to believe that there was some sort of a glitch and he couldn't destroy the block and had to abandon the screen altogether.
Yeah, I mean, people make fun of a lot of times will make fun of games for being broken in silly ways. This game is no exception. We do reminder, we do play on the original version without any of the bug patches that were introduced in the PAL and NA regions. And I think it's fairly evident by the number of times that it's actually required that the Cane of Samaria was not an early item to be implemented. So all of the weirdness that it enables, I'm willing to give the game developers a pass on that one. It is a strange, strange item. Tam giving us a look into never before seen checks here. So we're going to see if either of those Aga's Tower keys show up before Ganon's Tower. A nice heads up to check that big chest, because it's not a huge time investment. You may as well check it on the way.
Okay, so Fantallis up Death Mountain now.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Team But We're Buddies here, this is
Fantallis not up Death Mountain. Fantallis fake
this
powder.
is okay. Yeah, fake powder. This is a large brain play. It's very possible, like I mentioned, it's possible that both of the Aegis Tower small keys are going to show up in Ganon's tower. It's also possible that one of the Aegis Tower small keys and the magic powder show up in Ganon's tower. Unfortunately, using the lamp and with the half magic is a pretty slow way to use up all your magic. But yeah, this is pretty could be big if this is an Aegis Tower small. So with the Cane of Samaria, if you try to use it without magic and then switch to the mushroom, the game gets confused and thinks you're using the magic powder. That's a small key. What is it for? Dark Palace. Ah.
Now, I'm starting to wonder, with all these additional pod keys showing up, if the pod big key might actually be in pod, which would mean it would have to be vanilla. The vanilla big key chest is the only thing we haven't seen in pod.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't see that. I was sort of thinking about that. Fantallis also turning in the mushroom. So that is one more thing that could show up if we get vanilla big key.
Sorry, apparently we missed it. It was in Turtle Rock.
That's
big
right.
chest.
I did notice that earlier. I think it's in Turtle Rock. Yeah, because I did mention that earlier as Tam was finishing that up. The tracker does, in fact, the tracker is fixed now, does in fact report that Tam does have that Palace of Darkness big key. So that Palace of Darkness small key, unfortunately useless unless the vanilla big key chest has, again, an Aegis Tower small. Yeah, Fantallis in the unenviable position of having to make some big brain plays. It really is, though, a testament to these players' ability that you get that's a pretty bad last location that Fantallis got on those mitts, but we're still under an hour and a half in. Not a whole lot to clean up considering blisteringly fast paces from both of these runners.
So yeah, given that we can now get into ice, we really just need those castle tower keys. I mean, no one's checked PED yet either. There's nothing saying it's not on PED.
I thought we saw Tam just check that.
I
didn't notice what it was, but I did see Tam mirror after defeating Mothula, so I imagine that's what Tam was doing there. Piece of love.
That would make sense.
Yeah, if in that situation, there's no way that you don't mirror just to check it. The only reason I wouldn't is because I really like the blind ped meme. Even if I'm hard losing because of it, I love blind pulling ped. It's why I'm here behind the commentator's desk and not on screen playing, among other reasons.
And of course, we now have Sahasrara as a check.
Yeah, at this point, it's looking pretty linear here for Tam. Again, with Fantallis cleaning up some of those extra checks and not getting rewarded for it. It's looking more and more likely that Tam is just going to find those Aegis Tower keys as a matter of course, which again, that's what you hope for in these seeds. And that's why, people always harp on, A, B, C, D, always be clearing dungeons. Because if you run into everything you need along the way, that's the most efficient way you could have routed it. Yeah, so the things we haven't found yet, we haven't seen the last mail upgrade, we haven't seen the powder, we haven't seen Bombos, we haven't seen the last sword. None of those things are are things either of these runners are interested in at this point.
And
Tempered Sword and Silver is more than enough. Now here we may see Tam finish clearing out Pod here. So this is a little bit of time for Fantallis to make up. But again, it's looking it's in dire straits here for But We're Buddies here.
Yeah, I mean, all I can see is if there's some really weird last locationing on Tam's part to find a Castle Tower small key.
Yeah, and depending on whether or not it's an Ice Palace, it's like many other races, it's gonna come down a little bit to GT routing. But this is a big lead. GT routing isn't gonna make everything here. The GT placement could be big. Because I mean, not so much. Because again, the routing of GT is not as important because you don't need to find the GT big, but we do need to find the Aegis Tower smalls, and GT is not something that you want to do without doing it, without looking for them, because the very next thing these runners are going to want to do after Ganon's Tower is clear Aghanim's Tower, so they're not going to want to let that last chance to find those Aegis Tower smalls slip away and skip the basement. We have seen Spike Cave. We did see Fantallis do that earlier when last locationing Mitts. Yeah, as Chad is mentioning here, there's really no situation here where the Aegis Tower placement is going to favor Fantallis over Tam. It's really going to be down to maybe a big routing play in GT, like Spike Chest or Tile Room first or something like that, which is unfortunate, but you know that's the way the rando cookie crumbles sometimes. So Tam finishing off Palace of Darkness here. Only one more dungeon remaining. Technically, this dungeon is not required to do Ganon's Tower, but you certainly don't want to come back here after doing Ganon's Tower. Tam going back into Palace of Darkness, to clear out the back. Fantallis did this earlier, so all of this time is time that Fantallis is gaining. Still a sizable lead for Tam here, though.
But Tam wants to leave no stone unturned here and is going to get the big chest and the harmless Hellway chest.
Yeah, and it's... Again, that's one of the things that's a little bit rough, but a little bit, you know, part of the allure of AD keys here is that it's very hard to get away with skipping stuff. It can always potentially be costly.
This is why collection rates tend to be in the 180 to 190 range.
Yeah, it's so risky to skip anything ever unless you're completely in go mode. Again, just because there are those two Aegis Tower smalls that are essentially could be anywhere.
Best case scenario is you're in go mode by the time you get to GT and don't have to do the basement at all.
Yeah. I think again that's one of the myriad reasons that all dungeons is particularly popular in Key Sanity.
So is there anything at all we haven't seen besides Ice Palace and GT and, well, the second chest in Castle Tower?
I can't think of anything. I mean, there are lots of things that I personally didn't see because I didn't see either runner do it, but that's more on me. I think between these two runners, we've seen everything other than those locations you mentioned. It is really kind of funny how Go mode just doesn't seem to exist in All Dungeons Key Sanity. You know, even at this stage in the game, Tam is still doing every single check in Ice Palace here. I would be surprised to see Tam skip even Ice Tea at this point. Because no matter what kind of lead you could potentially have at this point, having to come back to any location for one of those 8 Agus Tower Smalls is going to be... It could lose you a race. There's one of them. After a very nice, very nice icebreaker glitch there. Not too much hesitation on that one. One more item remains for Go mode. The big question for Fantallis is it in Tile Room? That powder showing up is also something Tam might end up checking Magic Bat before going back up, because that's a relatively quick check to do. One other thing, actually, when mentioning checks that we haven't seen, I don't think we've seen either player go for the Pyramid Fairy. I would imagine we see Tam do that before going up to Agus Tower. Just because it's kind of nice to open up that, just in case the fairy gives you, you know, a blue potion or something. I mean, maybe not, but again, that's kind of the best place to check it, or the best time to check it, rather.
Yeah, that would make sense. I'm just thinking. I mean, I guess you could do it after GT, but of course it would be nicer if you get into Go mode before GT.
Yeah. Now, I would say the potential of saving time if you... Oh, Tam forgetting the big key is actually not in hand here. Ice Palace being one of the dungeons that, not logically, but very realistically, is completable without the big key. And at this point is just in complete full clear mode. Forgets the big key is actually not here. Not a big deal, because the chances that we have to come back to Ice Palace is slim and really doesn't favor your opponent at all.
That was a nice cold stare fight.
Yes, very nice. I've seen complaints of people calling non-nice cold stare fights very nice. That was definitely not a non-nice cold stare fight. That was very well done.
If cold stare doesn't even make it out of the corner that you've boxed it into, that's a good fight.
Yeah, especially with Tempered Sword. It is, you know, a few more hits with Tempered Sword. It's kind of like the Ganon fight, in which, you know, Tempered Sword versus Gold Sword doesn't really make that much of a time difference optimally, but it definitely really eases up on the execution. But doing it like that with the Tempered Sword, that's a nice fight. That's a fight you're happy about.
Okay, so Tam is skipping Pyramid Fairy.
Yeah, not a huge. I think the big difference maker there is finding that one Tower Small in Ice Palace. If Tam was looking for 2 here, I think we might be seeing Pyramid Fairy here. But given that there's only 1 and there's like 27 checks in GT. Oh yeah, I suppose we do have a game coming up here in about 15 to 20 seconds here. So we could start the game here, but we already know that the number of chests is going to be 0 because we already have the Ganon Tower Big Key. So congratulations to those of you who guessed 0. You were right. The Ganon Tower Big Key guessing game doesn't work so well in Key Sanity, unsurprisingly. Suppose we could start the Big Key guessing game at the start of the game. You can choose between 1 and 216. One interesting thing here is at what point do you decide to give up on the basement and hope it's on the top? I do not think it's likely we'll see Tam do that, but Fantallis may decide to go for that that sort of route, given the time lost from that last location of Mitts. All speculation at this point, but we'll see. We do, however, see Tam breaking my heart and not doing Tile Room immediately. Hey, there's the big key. We found it. It was in Compass Room.
So, what you're saying is that the Castle Tower small key is an Ice Palace big chest.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying before, if it is, that's not even bad for Tam, because Fantallis is going to have to do the same stupid runaround. So Tam is really in an excellent spot here. There's no place that Castle Tower Big Key could be that would favor Fantallis. The only spot would be if Fantallis lasers straight to Tile Room and checks that, and that's where it is. But even that, even with if Tam full clears the basement, I don't think that's going to be enough to make up this lead that Tam has right now.
There's also like
maybe Pyramid Fairy. But even that, like, this is a sizable lead that Tam has.
I was trying to think if that would even be a Galaxy Brain. Like, if the Ice Palace big chest has the last small key, it would be a Galaxy Brain play for Fantallis to go to GT right after Pod.
Yeah, you'd basically have to spoiler route it at that point. Like, I can't see a world in which you decide to take the routing that makes that a good play. Because you basically have to go straight for that big key and leave immediately. So, well, maybe not. I guess you'd finish the tower first, but like you'd nope out of the basement immediately, not do any of the left side, which is, again, that is the true definition of a Galaxy Brain play. Shout outs to the gold sword, which Tam doesn't care too much about at this point. Wants to see that other small key.
Yeah, that's another feature of AD keys that you wind up seeing Buttersword Silver's Ganon most of the time.
AD keys is sort of the most vanilla, most comprehensive mode. Interestingly, we do see this routing here. If you have the big key, it is quicker to check this before doing any of the other chests. The majority of the time in most modes, you don't care what's in the GT big chest. Key Sanity is one of the very few times when you do actually care.
So it looks like Fantallis' plan is hammer Yump here, mirror, then check the big key chest, then go to Helma.
Yeah, that's a fairly quick way to route it. It's gonna save a little bit of time, but
Nope, he's burning the key, and he is just gonna skip the big key chest.
Yeah, and again, it's the comprehensiveness required of AD keys that really makes stuff like this painful, because there's so few gambles you can get away with.
Which honestly, since we're short a pod key, makes me wonder if Pyramid Fairy has the final pod key.
I mean, we're getting down to it here. We haven't checked. We haven't physically picked up the Lumberjack. We haven't physically picked up Bumper Cave. Tam has left a couple things on the table. Unfortunately, Fantallis has been a little more thorough. Rightly so, just because of the the possibility of that big play making a difference. But there isn't much we haven't seen yet. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
That was a vanilla key. That was a pure vanilla key. You never see people do tile room in NMG or anything, but in the vanilla game, that just is a small key.
I mean, from a game design perspective, that's a good spot to put a small key, because you're supposed to complete that challenge room before you continue in the dungeon. Has a very Oracle of Ages / Seasons kind of feel to it, in my opinion. A lot of puzzle rooms that you just go and complete, and then you go on to the next room.
Though the only reason you would complete that room is to go right to get the compass, and, well, it's pretty obvious that the boss is going to be on the top of the tower, so what do you need the compass for?
Not necessarily. It could be in the darkest part of the basement. I think about how old Link is canonically. I mean, what kind of judgment is a child of that age going to have? Especially when facing down an ancient evil.
Yes, he wouldn't know the standard trope about how the boss is always at the top of the tower.
I mean, he needs a dictionary to read any writing. Clearly isn't very well read.
Okay, so that's going to be Fantastic 7th Crystal.
Yeah, and I imagine I can't think of a world where we don't see Ice Palace first.
And that'll give him one key, and then imagine if he does Pyramid Fairy. I think it's still gonna be too little too late, because he'll still need to make the GT climb even if he can skip the basement.
Yeah, honestly, the best chance was that, in my opinion, the best chance for redemption here for Fantallis was that fake powder. That was a good gamble to make. Because again, that's the sort of gamble that's like, okay, well, if it doesn't pay off, you weren't gonna win anyway. But if it does pay off, that can give you a really big shot. Because that fake powder does not really make sense. Unless you're really hoping to find a key in a spot that your opponent isn't checking. Because again, that's something that's not even in logic. So it's really reasonable to expect your opponent to not bother checking that.
Meanwhile, we're about to get our 4 upstairs checks here in GT on Tam's side.
Yeah, so we're left to what? This one, that one, the other one, the other one, and then Pyramid Fairy.
And Ice Palace Big Chest.
Ice Palace Big Chest. I mean, at this point, if it's in there, it's just like, you're rolling your eyes. It's like...
Did we ever see Skullwood's Big Chest?
Oh, we did. Tam bombed into it on the way in.
Okay, I figured someone had done it, but I couldn't quite remember.
Yeah, I do remember that quite distinctly, because I remember pointing it out. It's a nice thing to check on the way in.
Okay, so Pyramid Fairy or Ice Big Chest?
Did we ever see Sahasrara Green pendant turned.
Yeah, yeah, both of them turned in the
Okay.
green when they were finishing pod.
For some reason, because I was looking at Fantallis's tracker and I couldn't see the color of the Ice Palace pendant, so my brain was like, of course that was a green pendant.
No, the green pendant was desert.
Oh, pretty nice Aga 2. Aga 2 is low-key one of my favorite boss battles to do in Randomizer. Just because there's always something interesting about it. It's fairly simple conceptually. You know, you just hit the things back at him, but to do it quickly, it requires a lot of sort of on the fly. Okay, you know, how's the best place to get the maximum amount of damage from each one?
So I did realize one other possibility. That last castle tower key could be vanilla, and that's what Tam's hoping for right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine so. The other option is going to turn in the bomb, which, you know, is kind of slow if you haven't finished Aga's tower. So that's maybe a second that Fantallis is going to save. Already picking up that bottle. Yeah, and it is much faster to not find the key here than to not find it in Pyramid Fairy. So that's really the logic behind that.
But yes, Tam hasn't done Magic Bat, so that makes sense. Nice quick check.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's still not going to matter. Again, the sort of efficiency. When Fantallis was checking it was a potential for an upset, but it was an inefficient check to do, which of course is why you make that gamble, because you know your opponent's probably going to skip it because it's not a efficient play to make. Can imagine the hope in Tam's heart there, seeing that small key pop up. Feeling like a genius for just a second.
Now we're going to do Pyramid Fairy. And Fantallis. See, this would be a case of if you called that fight nice, it wasn't all that great. I mean, yeah, he kept most of his health, but still took a bit.
Yeah, it was definitely losing a lot of the tiny time saves that Fantallis. Well, not necessarily time saves, but you know, Tam spending time doing checks that Fantallis already did, not making a difference here, because that Cold Stare fight lost quite a bit of time over Tam's, and Cold Stare is a fight that, yes, it can be a little tricky, but at this level of play, you really count on it being a quick fight. You count on that quick kill, especially if you've got at least tempered. Oh, and so Tam dashes away from the bomb. If you make it, I think, 2 screens away before the countdown expires, and then screen transition.
You have to do a screen transition when the counter hits 0 is what it comes to. So
I see.
The first transition at 1, but then turned around and was able to do one at 0.
You got hook speed to save a frame or 2 on that door entry.
Oh,
there's
no.
Bombos. Never mind. It's in Ice Palace.
Well, this has been a seed.
Yeah, especially with that Bombos there. You know, it actually finally being an Ice Palace is, dare I say, silly. 'Tis a silly seed.
And even so, not much over 2 hours on Tam's side.
Yeah, this has not been a slow race. It is kind of unfortunate again that those tower key placements offered absolutely no advantage to Fantallis in any universe. And it all came down to sort of the single decision of, okay, do I do Thieves Town now or later? And that's really all it came down to. And that's a hard call to make in Key Sanity when you never know when that Thieves Town Small is going to show up. In a standard seed, it's sort of, okay, do I have hammer or not? In Key Sanity, it's, you know, you got to have the small key too, and which could be anywhere.
Yeah, unfortunately here, there's no way around Fantallis doing that whole GT climb, full clearing it.
Well, depending on how fast Ham is, Fantallis may be able to get that sweet DNC, which would be sweet release at that point in the seed. It's like, oh yes, I will gladly take not finishing the entirety of the game. But you know, we'll see. Tam's going to be picking that key up momentarily, and going and fighting Ganon, which will be pretty quick. Maybe we're, yeah, I think we might get a sub 2 hour here.
If Castle Tower, Aga 1.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because that seed was for Castle Tower, or that was for Castle Tower. For some reason, my brain was telling me, oh yeah, pick up this key, then fight Ganon. That key is his weakness. But yeah, so yeah, probably a little over 2 hours.
Oh, and Tam is having trouble climbing sorry, Fantallis is having trouble climbing Death Mountain here.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but you know, I've kind of written off of Fantallis's chances at this point. it's a cruel world if your name is Fantallis tonight.
He's having a Murphy's Law seed. Everything that can go wrong has gone wrong.
Yeah, and those are about the worst possible locations for the Agus Tower big keys. For so long, they were his only hope, but you know, they were sort of in spots that there's absolutely no conceivable way to get an advantage. Again, you know, like you mentioned earlier, you could Galaxy Brain. I'm not doing Ice Palace. I'm going to go up to Ganon's Tower. If I see the Ice Palace big key, I'll nope out and go straight up, finish it, and then go to Ice Palace. But there is no world in which a runner makes that decision. It would be so weird. That's the sort of play that if you see it, you're like, okay, somebody's cheating. Like, that's so suspicious.
And it's got to feel even worse, you know, when you know that this has just knocked your team out of getting an invitation for the Invitational League next season.
Yeah. I mean, the one consolation, I think this is really the secret. The secret that Rando holds is that there's always the consolation. Rando gonna Rando. In some way, it's always not your fault that you lost. And that's why we all love the game so very much.
Right, I mean, if those Titans mitts hadn't been vanilla, Fantallis would be right in this game. It was that one check.
Yeah, and again, like I mentioned, that single decision to go to Thieves Town earlier. At the time, there's no way. Like you can't be thinking, okay, how could this possibly, you know, mess me up? Oh, if specifically the Titans mitts are in the deciding to go to Thieves Town instead of Pod, because that was basically the 50-50 that it was.
And at the time, Thieves Town looked like the better play.
Yep, because it's the checks are quicker. That getting to the dungeon is super fast. Getting to Pod is slow. So I really liked the Thieves Town play there. It just turned out to be oh so very incorrect tonight, and that's what it comes down to. You know, both of these runners played well. One of them just played a longer version, unfortunately, for them. You know. At this point, though, we let's hope for a small number of Aga Blue balls. At this point, we'd take anything in the single digits.
So there's our Ganon.
At just under 2 hours. So not a seed you're happy to see. As we will see that completion rate, unless Tam cuts the feed early, which I hope we are not deprived of, because this is going to be a very, very high count. There are a couple things that Tam didn't check, if I recall. I don't recall if Tam checked the actual mushroom turn-in. I imagine we did see that, because that's too fast of a check to not do.
Yeah, we saw it from Tam before we saw it from Fantallis.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess my brain assumed that since we saw it from Fantallis that Tam hadn't done it either.
Yeah, so the thing here is Fantallis has done most of GT Basement. At this point, he has so few checks left. He may well just play out the seed.
Yeah, but playing out the seed involves, going back to Ice Palace.
Hey, at least you don't have to climb that mountain again after that.
Yeah, but I mean, even with Icebreaker, Ice Palace is kind of a chore. I think half of the allure of the Icebreaker is the fact that you can do all the checks at the front. If you've done all the checks again, it's still kind of a chore to go all the way down again, even if it is super fast. And that is GG for Tam, bringing Did You Check Your Boot another 3 points with an official race time of 2 hours, 1 minute, and 19 seconds. So that's for this seed, that's a good time. I'm satisfied with that time if I'm playing this seed.
Absolutely. We really haven't seen runners get that much sub 2 yet this week. So, 201 is perfectly in normal range.
And given that this was, what, above 200 item checks?
Probably.
That's pretty good efficiency, I would say. That's 100 item checks per hour. Which, given that there are only 60 minutes in an hour, is more than 1 per minute. Almost 2 per minute.
So I'm looking at
going into silly metrics.
I'm looking at best times so far this week, and Yoshi has posted the best time so far in either league of 1:58.02. Roland Tonkir has posted the best time so far in the Open League of 1:58.09. And the only other sub 2 hour we've seen has been from Yoshi's teammate Shireen, who got 1:58.22. So all things considered, that 201's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that also speaks to a lot to what makes 80 keys unique. It can vary a lot just in terms of what the routing is. It's not a pure execution fest. There's a lot of routing decision that goes into it, as we saw tonight. The difference in the race being a single decision in routing, really, kind of early on. But the overall time that it takes is actually, relatively close. The difference in the worst case and the best case scenario, if routed properly, is not that huge. So it's a lot of calm under pressure and a little bit of luck. So as Tam mercifully speeds through the credits here, as we see all of those very important people in the rando community, we see the important stuff. I guess it's not that important. 200 even out of 216.
Wow.
That is a heavy seed.
Yeah. And makes that time of just over 2 hours all the more impressive.
Yeah, again, like I said, that's 100 checks per hour. And given that that's basically the entire game, that's darn good. And again, speaking of efficiency, that's again the main advantage that Tam got from not last locationing the mitts, is the rest of the checks were able to be gotten with a lot more efficiency. Because again, with how stupid those darn Aga's Tower keys were, you had to be efficient in order to get them all done first.
So I was just checking with the runners. Unfortunately, they will not be able to give interviews tonight.
I don't blame
A
them.
little over 2 hours.
Not much to say about this one. It's like, oh, you know, how great was the fact that we had to look everywhere?
We'll just watch Fantallis finish this out on stream and then call it a night. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm game for that. I'll tell you that. My voice is getting a little bit worn out.
oh, Tam's in chat though, so feel free if you have questions for Tam to ask them in chat.
Bombard those questions. Just drop all of them because clearly not being able to interview means that all those questions are free for the answering here.
Yeah, and regarding what Tam's saying in chat, you know, you still almost sub-2'd. And had that great cold stare fight. If you're going to criticize your execution on cold stare, I don't know what to say.
Though I do think it is worth pointing out that the better you get at something, the more critical you become of yourself. I've seen it a number of times with a lot of different things. Fantallis missing that. Speaking of execution, missing that torch shot. But yeah, you don't get good at something by forgiving your own mistakes. It's a good lesson to take to heart. The perfect may be the enemy of the good, but the good enough is the enemy of the perfect.
But in any case, GG's on, you know, keeping your team in the running even for first, and certainly well positioned for the playoffs.
Yeah, that does bring Did You Check Your Boot up to a first place tie with Shacktool's Digging Game. Both of them rounding out their score with a 21 in the division. So breaking that 5-way tie, making it a 4-way tie, including all of the previous tiers except for that team. They have now ascended to the first place plane.
And here's Agate 2, and Fantallis will probably do the same thing because he'll be right there to mirror to Castle Tower and go up and not find the small key there.
Yeah, if I'm Fantallis here, I do the tower, not find the small key, maybe check Pyramid, but I get as far as finding out I have to go to Ice Palace, and just like, you know what? No, I'm good, thanks. I always, you know, I mentioned earlier how much I like the Agate 2 fight. You know, if I'm that close to Agate 2, I at the very least finish off Agate 2. That's it's a fun fight to practice, and it's also good to just get your mind in that, because the more you practice it, the better you get at it. Just reading the positioning you got to be at, because it can be very precise. The difference between getting a triple and getting nothing.
And unfortunately, that is a forfeit on Fantallis' part. I guess he decided after beating Agate 2 that he didn't want to deal with, well, is it the second Castle Tower chest, or am I going to have to go all the way back into ice? So that'll do it for us tonight, then.
Yeah, what else have we got on the docket here?
Well,
looks like we got SpeedGaming 1, not with the number, but just SpeedGaming, does have a race that just should have just started from Komodo Hypers versus Operation Got Good. Another 18-0 matchup. So if you want to see that, you can pop over there.
We also have a race that's about in the middle between Adirondack Rick and Fant on SpeedGaming 2. So you get your choice. Do you want to join a race just started 15 minutes ago or join a race that's an hour 15 minutes in? Either way, there'll be 2-hour races, so plenty to see.
Yeah, but this one in particular was it was a tiring match. I feel like I feel like that's just watching that seed made me exhausted.
Oh, a definite doozy.
200 out of 216. That's an exhausting number. That's an insane number of checks to go through.
Yeah, and maybe even higher on Fantallis' side.
Yeah.
Well, no.
But yeah, that'll do it for us tonight. We got a couple more matches going on, and we'll see you all next time. It's early in the week. We got a lot more coming up this week, but for tonight, I've been Esmar.
And I'm Drosy. And we wish you a good rest of your evenings.